Manifesting things, making your way when there is no way, spiritual excerpts from life by Misha McGlown. Chapter 4, Love. Love begins at home, and it is not how much we do, but how much love we put in that action. Mother Teresa. Have I learned anything in my 30-something odd years on this planet? That was the question I asked myself after learning the man I had just given myself to, mind, body, and soul, disclosed the truth about his marital status. During the course of our relationship, I trusted in him, his words, choosing to ignore the obvious signs, as we often do. I had slept with him only once, but did so under the auspices of his honesty. I gave of myself unselfishly, as if I had known him for 100 years. It had been a long time since I had rendered myself this vulnerable. This was a rude awakening. Upon his disclosure of the real truth, a lot of hurt feelings rose to the surface. I felt angry, I felt violated, I felt stupid, I felt sick, I felt used, I felt cheated, I felt exposed, and so on. I felt as though I had let myself down, breached my own trust. I had exercised poor judgment, and would be a lifetime, I thought, before I would have confidence in my own emotions again. I really thought I had found something special, finally, someone I didn't have to play games with. The disappointment was immense. Not so much because of my feelings for him, but because I believed that once people reached a certain level of maturity, they could just be themselves, be generous and real, take their clothes off, so to speak. I was painfully wrong. The more I replayed the scenes since our meeting, the more holes there were to be found, potential lies that I simply wasn't perceptive to at the time. Somewhere in my heart, I tried to believe he had not set out deliberately to hurt me, as neither of us had been looking for a relationship at the time we met. The opportunity presented itself, though, and the attraction was undeniable. He was in the midst of a very raggedy separation, and I don't suppose he had quite rehearsed the lines he would recite to a potential love interest. By the time he figured it out, though, it was conveniently too late. I had done all, given all, stripped bare, literally and figuratively. Nothing he did afterwards, however, suggested that he had planned it any other way. This was all quite confusing. There was no apology, no acknowledgement of his misrepresentation of himself. He simply explained his situation and told me, more or less, that the ball was in my court. I have not seen him since. I could not believe how stupid I felt, though. I'd have to say stupid was the prevalent feeling. Unfortunately, as we get older and our expectations rise, we fall even harder, and the healing process becomes increasingly difficult to surmount. At my age, was the thought that prefaced most of my hurt feelings. How could I let this happen at my age? Here was a man that I felt an immediate and instant connection with. Let's call him R. He was my ideal in every way, or at least that was my impression at the time. R's presence invoked inspiration, thought, and energy, and I couldn't remember the last time I'd felt that way about anyone. While he was someone I would have liked to have kept in my life in some capacity, even after the ugly revelation, in the wake of his indiscretion, I would find it extremely difficult to entertain him even as a friend. So it was a done deal. I realized, however, that on some level I did love R, and love, real love, transcends way beyond the boundaries of possession, being together, or even seeing each other for that matter. It pardons people's indiscretions and wishes them the best, even when they've hurt you. I have not seen R in several months now. I am not angry with him. I never was, for that matter, more with myself. I don't desire him. I can't even say that I miss him. Yet I don't love him any less. Strangely to most, I silently send him my blessings and even hope that he and his wife, if it is in the stars, are somewhere salvaging what's left of their tattered union. While initially faced with this feeling of rejection and loss, I had to remember a few of my own lessons. First of all, there was no loss. Loss is but an illusion. Love is constantly transforming itself for one reason or another. Everything has its time and purpose. Although we may be hoping for something else, I don't believe that anything is fortuitous. The universe puts you in places and in contact with people who are the carriers of specific messages. Excuse me. Everything has its time and purpose. Although we may be hoping for something else, I don't believe that anything is fortuitous. The universe puts you in places and in contact with people who are the carriers of specific messages. It is important, however, to be able to distinguish the message from the messenger. R was the messenger of the inspiration I needed at that particular juncture in life. Prior to meeting him, I had been in a funk somewhat. I had stopped dead in my tracks, overwhelmed in an effort to put together the pieces of the puzzle of my life. I had the inclination to continue with this writing, but had yet to figure out how to get up off my behind and do it. R's sheer presence motivated me to bring this book to fruition, a project I had put in motion several years earlier that had since been collecting dust somewhere in a dairy crate. It, manifesting things, had begun to haunt me. Yet I had not even given serious thought to its revision. There were old ideas that would invariably be obsolete. There were others I would still find relevant. And certainly there were new and hopefully evolved ideas to carefully work into all of this. First of all, I would have to find the damn manuscript, and that was perhaps the most daunting task of all. As much of this venture had been summoning me, I knew I was not in a frame of mind to access the concepts within myself necessary to amend this work. I was immobilized by the sheer magnitude of it all, finding it, rewriting it, sending it out, and swallowing my impending criticisms with grace. My first conversation with R catapulted me into action. We sat there across from each other at a tiny table in Starbucks, both of our tall knees touching the underside of the table, neither of us really knowing the purpose of our meeting. Somehow in conversation it fell from my lips. Manifesting things. While I had been thinking about it heavily for several weeks, the utterance of the words was the first in years. The syllables seemed to take flight, whisking me home to work feverishly in its revision. There wasn't anything in particular that R said which led me to this. In fact, I can't even remember how the subject came up. There was just something about the tenor of our meeting, the energy amidst us that provided a space for those words to enter into the atmosphere, breathing in me the impetus to begin and ultimately complete this work. That was perhaps his single importance in my life, and yet I'm careful not to give him too much credit for that. The message itself was from the divine. R was the carrier, the instrument, the cloak through which the message was delivered. And while I would have liked for him to have been my perfect love, I realized later that my perfect love still awaits somewhere. And I had better stop wasting my time brewing over this one and get myself in gear. Manifesting things.